What the Wolf Wants. Chapter 5. A House, a River, and 2 Seconds. Bruce Goff designed houses the way Oklahoma throws weather. Without apology, without precedent, and with a certain sublime disregard for what anyone had expected. He worked in the mid-20th century out of Tulsa and Norman and the University of Oklahoma, and the houses he left behind are the architectural equivalent of a sentence that starts one way and ends somewhere else you did not see coming, and are better for having arrived at. Hexagonal floor plans. Roof lines that seemed to be considering something, materials that had no prior history in residential construction, and turned out to be correct anyway. Living in a Goff house is living inside someone's finest, most committed idea, and the idea has opinions about where the light should be at 4 p.m. Orsino's house was a genuine Goff, one of the surviving Midtown examples that had passed through several owners and several near demolitions before finding its way to a man who understood instinctively that you do not renovate a Goff house so much as you entered into a conversation with it. He had furnished it sparsely, which was correct. He had not painted over the original interior colors, which were doing things that most interior colors do not attempt. He had placed a reading chair at the precise spot where the light came in from the west-facing irregular window at 7 p.m, and he sat in it every night he was home, which was not as often as he would like. He poured bourbon without asking whether Vic wanted it, which is how Vic understood that they were past the professional part of the evening. He sat across from her in the conversation pit area, a sunken ring of seating that Goff had apparently designed for people to talk in, and which succeeded at this, and said, "Orsino, you've been at St. Agatha's twice this week." Viv said, "You've sent 2 letters this week." Orsino said, "How did she seem?" Viv, choosing words with the care of a person constructing a technical report, composed, precise. "She has a very organized grief. She hasn't opened the letters." "I know," said Orsino. "You know?" "Yes, Maura told me. Maura tells me most things. I'm not sure she's aware she does it. It seems to be a form of quality control she runs on the people Olivia is adjacent to." Viv, recalibrating her entire understanding of Maura. "She's running quality control on you?" "On everyone. The letters aren't the problem, Vic. The letters are what I can do from here, from this distance. I don't know how to close the distance." Viv looked at the house, the way the walls met at angles that felt like decisions rather than constraints, the ceiling doing something quietly astonishing above them, and thought of geological formations, which is what she thought about when she needed a framework for something she didn't have yet. Strata under pressure, things that wanted to move and couldn't, things that moved anyway, eventually, along fault lines you hadn't mapped. Have you tried just talking to her? Not in a letter, not through me, just as yourself, about something that isn't... Orsino cut in. Geological. I don't think she reads them anymore." Viv responded, "All the more reason to talk about something that isn't a formation analogy, something real." Orsino, after a long silence, said, "I don't know." Viv asked quietly, "What are you actually afraid of?" Orsino, looking at the firelight, I guess I'm afraid that she'll see me clearly, and it won't be enough. That the distance is on my side, and I've been blaming the geology." The fire said nothing, which was the correct response. The house held them in its odd, generous geometry. Viv did not say what she was thinking, which was, "I understand so precisely it hurts in a way I'm not going to examine tonight. I understand it completely." She said, "Show me the park, the gathering place. You said you run it at night." He looked at her for a moment. Then he put his glass down and got his jacket. The gathering place was what happens when a city decides to do something magnificent for itself and then actually does it. It sat on the west bank of the Arkansas River in midtown Tulsa, a vast, beautifully designed public park that had opened a few years earlier and had immediately become, without fuss or fanfare, simply part of what Tulsa was. Great lawns, trees, winding paths, playgrounds that seemed designed by people who had thought carefully about joy, boat docks on the river, and at the edges, where the park met the water, the particular quality of light that happens when a city reflects off a wide, dark river at night, all amber and white, shimmering and patient. Right now it was closed, but one could still walk down the city sidewalks adjacent. Orsino ran this park most evenings. He knew it the way a person knows a route that they have made a part of their breathing, not consciously, but structurally, so that a change in it would register before he could say why. He walked it with Vic at a pace that was somewhere between purposeful and unhurried, and said almost nothing for the first 5 minutes, which Vic recognized as the pace of a man letting the place speak first. It spoke. The river was doing its slow, wide thing at the park's edge. The dam that made Zinc Lake held the water still and reflective just south of them, so that from the right angle, the Arkansas looked like it had simply decided to be a lake for a while, the way Oklahoma weather decides to be one thing and then another without much notice. A sign near the boat dock said, "Kayak and canoe rentals," with hours that ended at dusk. It was past dusk. The sign had the resigned air of a sign that was being used to being read after its relevant moment. "Is that Zinc Lake?" asked Viv. Orsino responded, "Officially, it's the Arkansas River, dammed up. The river's still in there. It's just being patient." "The Arkansas is never patient," said Viv. A small surprised sound. Not quite a laugh, but its first cousin. From Orsino. "No, it's performing patience. There is a difference." "Viv, I spent a week on the Arkansas in a canoe doing a survey between Muskogee and Fort Smith. The river has exactly one speed, which is the speed it chooses, and the concept of a schedule does not enter into it." "What were you surveying?" "Legacy well infrastructure, looking for orphan well casings. We found 4. "In the river?" "Yes. 2 in the river, 1 on a sandbar that appears and disappears seasonally, and 1 in someone's backyard, in a way that suggested they'd been aware of it for decades and made a decision not to pursue the matter." "That's half a federal investigation." "That's Oklahoma." They walked south along the trail that runs below the 11th Street Bridge and follows the river's west bank. The bridge was historic Route 66 structure, a mid-century steel-through truss, the kind of bridge that was built by people who believed infrastructure should have presence and which had outlasted several proposals to replace it with something more efficient and less itself. At night, lit from below, it had the quality of a thing that knew it was being looked at and was accustomed to the attention. The trails south of the bridge were quieter, fewer lights, fewer people, the river wider and more itself here than the managed beauty of the gathering place. The cottonwoods along the bank were bare, the November air with the particular cold clarity that comes after a wind has settled, and the path had the quality of somewhere you could say something true without it feeling consequential, because the river was there to absorb it. Olivia had called 3 hours earlier to say that she would be at the gathering place after work. She had said it to Maura, and Maura had told Orsino. Orsino had told Vic with the specific casualness of a man who has arranged something and doesn't want to appear to have arranged it. Viv recognized this immediately and said nothing, because she was discovering that working with Orsino required a certain tolerance for the space between what he acknowledged and what was actually happening. Olivia was on the south trail, walking north. She saw Orsino first, and her composure did what composure does when it's genuinely tested, which is hold, but only just, and only by becoming briefly, visibly effortful. Then she saw Vic, and something in her face rearranged to something warmer and less defensive, which was its own information. Olivia, evenly to Orsino. Agent Orsino. Orsino, with the grace of a man who has been practicing this. Miss Thornwood. I didn't. We were just walking the south trail. Olivia responded, of course, to Vic a little warmer. Oh, Mr. Calloway. Viv responded, Miss Thornwood, how are the rehearsals going? Olivia, with the ghost of a real smile. Oh, Mr. Festerman made it through Act 1 without incident this week. We're considering it a milestone. You should celebrate that. We gave him a biscuit. He seemed pleased. Orsino excused himself with the excuse of a phone call, which was either genuine or the most considerate manufactured exit in the history of romantic interference. He walked back up the trail toward the gathering place, and Olivia watched him go with the careful expression of someone managing several things simultaneously, and then turned back to Vic with something that was not quite relief and not quite anticipation, but was in the neighborhood of both. They walked for 40 minutes. Viv was supposed to talk about Orsino. She talked about Pennsylvania-era crinoid fossils which she had found in the limestone outcroppings along the riverbank trail, and Olivia, who had grown up walking this river with her geologist brother, knew exactly which formations she meant and named them without prompting. They talked about her brother, Orion, the way that Olivia rarely talked about him, which was directly and with a kind of flat, clear-eyed love that didn't require anything from the person it was said to. Viv received the information the way that she received hard data, without flinching, without filling the space with comfort. Olivia said, Orion used to say that the Arkansas River was the best geological introduction to Oklahoma because it was so obviously unimpressed with everything it passed through. It just went, regardless. Viv said, That's the most accurate description of a river I've ever heard. Olivia laughed. Not a polite laugh. The kind of laugh that's the real kind. The kind that arrives before composure can review it. The kind she had not, by her own admission later to Maura, produced in approximately for months. It surprised her. She put one hand briefly over her mouth, the way people do when they're surprised by their own happiness. The river moved alongside, unimpressed and ongoing. Viv, after a moment, Zinc Lake, the dammed up part of the river. You know, they call it a lake. Olivia responded, I know. It's always seemed like a very Tulsa thing to do. Take something large and unwieldy and give it a tidier name and then just agree that that's what it is now. Does it work? Well, I think so. The park is beautiful. The river is still the river. I think the city has made its peace with the contradiction, said Olivia. Is that, do you do that? Make peace with contradictions? Asked Viv. Olivia paused. She knew it was not about Zinc Lake. I'm working on it. Some contradictions take longer than others. I guess what the hardest thing is to make peace with things you can't do anything about. Viv responded, I think it's amazing that your brother related everything through geology. And more, geological thinking. Olivia responded, I really miss him. The walk back was quieter. They had covered the terrain that easy conversation covers and arrived somewhere that required different language. Neither of them had it yet. Both of them were okay with this. The gathering place was coming back into view, its amber path light strung through the dark. The sound of the river was behind them now. There was a place in the path where it narrowed briefly around the landscaped bank, without particular intention, or with the kind of intention that doesn't announce itself until it's done, and Olivia reached out and took Vic's hand in thanks. It lasted 2 seconds, perhaps 3. And it was the first time since Orion's death that she had allowed herself any sort of physical human contact, any sharing of grief, or more to the point, appreciation for what her brother was and what he had meant to her. She let go. She did not look at Vic. She kept walking, her pace unchanged, her posture composed, and said something about the Thursday forecast being cold and whether the trails would ice. Viv said something about trail drainage and limestone permeability. They were both talking about something else entirely. Viv felt Olivia's deep loss, and she felt her own fear for Seb's safety. Why hadn't he called her? This was getting alarming. Orsino was waiting on a bench near the boat dock when Vic came back alone. He read her expression, or didn't, because he was a professional and professionals look at facts rather than faces, and said nothing for a moment, which she appreciated. Olivia had gone home from the north entrance, which was also a fact. How did she seem? Viv paused. She's carrying a lot that she does not show. Orsino responded quietly, Oh. She talked about her brother, told me about his passion for geology, what he loved to do, the places he went, how he expressed himself. I think she doesn't do that very often. Orsino agreed. She doesn't, or she didn't with me. I always arrived with the letters already written. Viv looked at the river. Maybe next time you could arrive without one. Did you ever think about how your use of geological terminology could be misconstrued? Orsino paused. I thought she would like it. I thought it appealed to her. They walked back through the gathering place toward the parking area. The park was emptying. The river moved as it always moved, without consulting anyone's schedule. Overhead, the partial moon had cleared the tree line above the 11th Street Bridge, and then was doing what Oklahoma moons do in November, sitting very large and very certain in a sky that had agreed to have no clouds in it tonight, as a courtesy. In her chest, behind her sternum, in the place where the wolf lived, something had shifted very slightly on its axis, like a formation that has been stable for years and has registered quietly and without drama that the pressure has changed. She went home to the apartment Dee had arranged for her, a decent one-bedroom on the 4th floor of a building on Peoria, 4 blocks from the ATF office, and she sat on the bed in the dark for a while without turning on the lights. She was thinking about Olivia Thornwood's laugh and the 2 seconds on the trail where she actually felt Olivia's grief over the death of her brother. Then she thought of the 4 months of ham-fisted, tone-deaf letters that Orsino had sent. How would she feel if someone sent her love letters using Seb's interests? Viv felt herself feeling angry in spite of herself. Viv was seeing people geologically, she realized with a start. It was that nothing was ever visible on the surface, except for subtle indications that few would ever perceive. She told herself it would be simpler in the morning. She did not tell herself this twice, because she knew that simpler really meant distracting herself with work so that she did not worry. Chapter 5, The End.